Horror cinema has given us countless terrifying figures, but few have penetrated the collective unconscious, quite like the burned dream-stalker who hunts victims in their sleep. This exploration examines the elaborate mythology constructed around this character, tracing a narrative that transforms simple horror into profound psychological terror through themes of abandonment, revenge, and the vulnerability inherent in sleep itself. The mythology begins in Springwood, Ohio, with a birth shrouded in tragedy and shame. The origin story centers on Amanda, a woman whose past contained unspeakable trauma. Institutionalized and declared insane, she suffered brutal violence within the walls of a psychiatric facility, violence that resulted in pregnancy. This disturbing foundation establishes the character's existence as consequence rather than choice, a life beginning with rejection before consciousness even formed. The child born from this horror entered a world already prepared to despise him. The circumstances of conception marked him before he could speak, creating a self-fulfilling prophecy of isolation and cruelty. This origin establishes a crucial thematic element. The monster wasn't born evil but created through systematic abandonment and societal failure. The mythology asks uncomfortable questions about collective responsibility and the consequences of turning away from suffering we find inconvenient or disturbing. Growing up in Springwood, the boy experienced relentless rejection from every direction. Other children called him cursed and maintained fearful distance. Adults, teachers, neighbors, anyone who might have intervened chose willful blindness over engagement. This systematic failure created an environment where cruelty flourished unchecked, where a vulnerable child learned that the world offered nothing but hostility and pain. The shadows became his only companions, silence his only comfort. This period of the mythology explores how society creates its own monsters through negligence. The bullying went unaddressed, the suffering invisible to those who should have cared. The child learned to hide his pain, to suppress rage and fear, but these emotions didn't disappear. They accumulated, building pressure that would eventually explode with devastating consequences. The narrative suggests that evil often begins not with inherent wickedness, but with the complete absence of love and support during formative years. The pivotal moment arrives with brutal finality. Amanda's murder, flames consuming not just a person, but the last fragment of the boy's humanity. Witnessing this violence, watching fire destroy his mother, the child who might have been saved disappeared. Something else emerged from those flames, something forged in trauma and fueled by rage. This transformation represents the point of no return, where accumulated pain and abandonment crystallize into something supernatural and terrifying. The fire serves multiple symbolic functions. It represents purification and destruction simultaneously, the burning away of human vulnerability and its replacement with something harder and more dangerous. The mythology suggests this wasn't merely psychological transformation, but metaphysical. The trauma was so profound it altered reality itself, giving birth to something that could transcend normal physical limitations. From this point forward, the story shifts from tragedy to horror, from sympathetic origin to predatory threat. Following his transformation, the character discovers the ability to enter and manipulate dreams, turning the universal human experience of sleep into a hunting ground. This concept taps into primal fears. We spend roughly a third of our lives unconscious and vulnerable, unable to control what our minds create. The mythology weaponizes this vulnerability, suggesting that the place we go to rest and recover might instead become a battlefield where we're hunted by something that knows our deepest fears. The dream realm provides the perfect domain for this entity. Here, physical laws don't apply, fear manifests tangibly, and the hunter possesses absolute advantage over disoriented prey. Victims can't distinguish dream from reality, can't escape by waking, can't defend themselves with conventional weapons. The mythology creates a scenario of ultimate helplessness, where the very act of closing your eyes becomes potentially fatal. This inverts the normal safety of sleep, transforming rest into risk. Central to the mythology is the iconic bladed glove, a weapon that represents the transformation of suffering into offensive capability. Each blade doesn't merely cut flesh but strikes at the soul, inflicting damage that transcends the physical. The weapon embodies the character's philosophy. Fear itself is the real killer. The physical damage merely manifestation of psychological destruction. The more victims fear, the stronger their tormentor becomes, creating a feedback loop where terror amplifies terror. This understanding of fear as fuel demonstrates sophisticated psychological insight. The mythology doesn't present simple monster kills victim scenarios, but rather explores how terror works, how it feeds on itself, how it can literally give power to its source. Victims aren't chosen randomly but selected for their capacity for fear, for psychological vulnerabilities that can be exploited. The entity reads minds, anticipates responses, crafts personalized nightmare scenarios tailored to maximum psychological impact. The hunting methodology described in the mythology reveals methodical patience rather than random violence. The entity plays with victims, extending terror, savoring fear before delivering death. This cruelty serves dual purposes, maximizing suffering while strengthening the predator through accumulated dread. Time distorts and dream space seconds become eternities of terror. Death approaches with agonizing slowness. Victims experience extended psychological torture before inevitable conclusion. The community's response mirrors realistic patterns of denial and panic. Some attempt rationalization, seeking logical explanations for unexplainable deaths. Others turn to desperate measures, ancient rituals, protective charms, anything offering hope against supernatural threat. Yet nothing proves effective against an enemy existing primarily in consciousness, rather than physical space. The mythology creates a scenario of comprehensive helplessness, where every defense fails and hope itself becomes dangerous delusion. What makes this mythology particularly effective is its exploration of trauma's transmission across generations. The entity created by abandonment and violence now inflicts those same experiences on others, perpetuating cycles of pain. Parents who perhaps contributed to the original abandonment now watch their children suffer consequences. The mythology suggests that cruelty creates consequences that persist, that societal failures eventually return to haunt those who looked away. Survivors emerge psychologically shattered, forever marked by experiences that blur boundaries between sanity and madness. The trauma they suffer transcends normal PTSD. They've encountered something that shouldn't exist, survived impossible situations, witnessed reality's malleability. These survivors carry invisible scars, memories of battles that seem unreal yet left tangible damage. Their ongoing suffering demonstrates that escape doesn't equal victory, that surviving such encounters permanently alters one's relationship with reality itself. The mythology's depth comes from refusing simple characterization. The entity simultaneously appears as victim and victimizer, tragic figure and merciless killer. This duality creates uncomfortable complexity. How do we judge a monster created entirely by human cruelty? The original child deserved protection and received only abandonment. The resulting entity deserves destruction, yet stems from comprehensible cause. This ambiguity forces engagement with difficult questions about responsibility, redemption, and whether some damage proves irreparable. Some interpretations emphasize the tragic elements, a life destroyed before it began, potential extinguished by systematic failure. Others focus on the monstrous present, arguing that origin doesn't justify ongoing cruelty. This tension makes the character fascinating beyond simple scares. He represents the consequences we'd rather not acknowledge, the price of societal neglect, the monsters we create through collective indifference. Understanding this doesn't mean excusing, but rather recognizing uncomfortable truths about cause and effect. As the mythology develops, boundaries between dream and waking dissolve. Victims no longer trust their perceptions, can't determine consciousness state, exist in perpetual limbo between worlds. This confusion serves the predator perfectly. Disorientation multiplies vulnerability. The entity's presence distorts reality itself, his power so intense it bleeds from unconscious into conscious experience. Springwood becomes nightmare geography, where natural laws increasingly fail, where the impossible becomes routine. This blurring creates sustained paranoia within both narrative and audience. If victims can't trust their senses, neither can viewers. The mythology exploits fundamental uncertainty about consciousness. How do we definitively know we're awake? What if dreams could actually harm us? These questions tap into philosophical territory while maintaining visceral horror. The result is multi-layered terror operating on both immediate and existential levels simultaneously. Fighting this entity requires confronting internal demons as much as external threats. The mythology frames survival as psychological struggle. Victims must face their own fears, guilts, and weaknesses that fuel their tormentor. This internalization transforms monster fights into personal journeys. Victory, when possible, comes not from superior force, but from inner strength, from accepting pain rather than fleeing it, from courage that exists despite rather than without fear. This framework elevates the mythology beyond simple monster stories. The real enemy isn't the burned figure with blades, but the fear residing in all of us. The entity simply manifests and weaponizes emotions we carry constantly. Defeating him means defeating ourselves, or at least our worst aspects. Few achieve this, making each victory meaningful while emphasizing how profound the challenge truly is. The mythology suggests that facing what terrifies us represents the only path to freedom from it. The enduring power of this mythology stems from its symbolic richness. Beyond surface horror, it addresses genuine concerns about vulnerability, revenge, societal failure, and fear's power over human consciousness. The character represents what happens when we ignore suffering, when communities fail their most vulnerable members, when trauma goes unaddressed across generations. He's a dark mirror reflecting collective failures and their inevitable consequences. Modern audiences continue finding relevance in these themes. Contemporary discussions about childhood trauma, mental health, societal responsibility, and violent cycles all connect to elements present in this mythology. The character transcends simple monster status to become cultural symbol for multiple anxieties about sleep, safety, consequences, the darkness potentially residing in anyone pushed too far. His universality ensures continued resonance across different eras and contexts. The mythology ultimately presents fear as an ineradicable aspect of human experience. The entity exists because we fear, and as long as fear exists, so will he. This creates a scenario without true resolution. Individual victories might occur, but the underlying threat persists. Each generation faces the same nightmare. Each must find courage to resist. Each pays the price for battles their predecessors may have caused. The cycle continues indefinitely, powered by unchanging human nature. Yet within this darkness, the mythology offers fragile hope. Each person resisting fear, maintaining courage despite terror, weakens the shadow's power. Collective strength might not eliminate the threat, but can contain it, reduce suffering, protect others. The real battle isn't against external monster, but internal weakness. Victory means not eliminating fear, but refusing to let it control us, choosing courage despite justified terror. This message transforms horror into inspiration, suggesting human resilience might ultimately prevail over human darkness. This elaborate mythology demonstrates horror's capacity for exploring serious themes through fantastic frameworks. Whether interpreted as pure fiction, psychological metaphor, or something darker, the story resonates because it addresses genuine human concerns. For mature audiences capable of engaging with complex themes, it offers rich material for contemplation about responsibility, consequences, trauma, and fear's role in human experience. The burned dream stalker endures not despite his disturbing nature, but because of it. He represents our shadow selves, our capacity for creating monsters through neglect, our vulnerability during unconsciousness, our struggle with fear that never completely disappears. The mythology's power lies in forcing us to confront uncomfortable truths about human nature, while warning us that the monsters we create often return to haunt us. In recognizing this, perhaps we can break cycles of trauma and abandonment, preventing new nightmares from being born. The darkness waits, but awareness offers hope that together we might finally bring truth to light.